Hey guys, Kurt Lawton, Minnesota homebrewer since 2017. Shown here having a favorite beverage at my favorite Minneapolis brewery, Udapils. I started down this homebrew path back in the 90s when a co-worker friend of mine in Kansas City suggested we brew a brown ale, and so that got me started on the stovetop with extract, and then I moved to Minnesota and kind of got away from it for a while. And then in 2017, my youngest son, Matt, suggested that perhaps I get back into it. And I said, sure, I'll do it if I can do all grain and put it in kegs, because I didn't want a bottle. So all that led to some garage brewing, and then got into electronic brewing with my Grainfather, and then I built a Keyser and have been kegging ever since. What I love about all grain brewing is the creativity and recipes, and just the chance to get to spend time in the grain aisle at the homebrew shop, figuring out, chewing on some grain, and just loving the process. Kind of like how much time I spend at the craft beer aisle at the local liquor store. So cheers to 9 years of home brewing here in my current setup, getting more into yeast starters and water chemistry, and even brewing lagers now with the ability to control my fermentation temperatures. So anyway, here's to some friends who are curious about my brewing process, and so we'll let that take it away. Tell me how to adjust my current water chemistry and turn it into this German brewing water. So I think it's pretty important here. So this is really step 0 in the brewing process, where I'm getting my yeast starter going the day before. I usually run it between 12 and 24 hours to get the yeast happy. So to begin the brew day, we've got to heat the sparge water, and once it gets up to 190, and I've got my preheated water in my cooler, which I'll dump out, and then I'll dump the sparge water into the cooler, because it's going to sit until I do the sparge after the grain is all mashed. Okay, now I'm preparing the mash water. I've got the sparge water safely inside the cooler until I need it. It went in at 190 degrees, hopefully. So here's the grain I'm going to be using today. I've got about, I think, 10 pounds total for this German Helles. I got this at my local homebrew store and crushed it there. So the grains are not totally, they're just cracked open, so we can really start to get the sugars out of it during the mash. That'll help create the alcohol and the flavor, of course. Okay, my Grainfather unit is electronic brew unit's telling me that it's time to add the grain basket, so we can add the grain. You'll see later that once we get the grain and it steeps during the mash, that we will lift that up and drain it and create the wort at the bottom. So now we're going to begin to add the grain. I put a couple of these in, and then I'll stir it up just to make sure that the grain is uniformly wet and all that. And this is basically, once I get all 10 gallons in here, it's going to turn it into like oatmeal. Okay, we've added all 10 pounds, and it's now you're starting to see that the consistency of the mash, and it looks like We've got some oatmeal going on, Okay, so this is the beginning of a step mash, which I'll talk about in a minute. But what I've done is I've added this recirculating arm, and it started the pump. There's a pump down here, so it's pumping the water from the bottom of the Grainfather and recirculating back. So we're constantly circulating the water through the grain overall. Okay, while we're in step one of this step mash, I'll talk a little bit about, because mashing is really the first crucial step in all grain brewing. The malted grains are mixed with hot water, and it's really going to convert the starch into fermentable sugars to create what we call a wort once we drain all the water out of the grain, and then that will be boiled to create the beer. So that's kind of how it all starts. The 4 steps, the first one is a protein rest. It helps break down the proteins. It's going to kind of reduce any kind of haze in the beer and improve foam stability. The second one is kind of a beta amylase rest. It's going to help kind of create more highly fermentable sugars for a drier, crisper finish. The third one's going to be the alpha amylase rest. Again, it's going to increase the enzymatic conversion for a better efficiency. And then the last step's going to be to stop all the enzyme activity, and it'll lower the viscosity when I am ready to drain the grain. Okay, now that the mash part has ended, we will take out this arm, and the grains have been mashing for 2 hours now. And so what we will do is, now we're going to lift the basket out of the bed of water that it's been sitting in. And now you'll see, and you can hear the water draining out of the grain. So at this point, we will put this on as we put more water over the grain to rinse it out. And now we will check to see where our sparge water's at. Okay, let's see what our water temperature is. We're looking for right around 65 to 168. Looking good, considering it's... So now I'm pulling it out of my orange cooler and just pouring it across. This has got perforated holes, so it's going down into the grain. Rinsing out all of the last starch that is remaining in the grain, which will all drain down into my Grainfather, the bottom, and into the wort. Now we're going to lift the grain basket off the beer, put it in my bucket, let it finish draining, and now you're starting to see the wort that we're going to deal with. Once we get up to a boil, and our boil, we're doing a 60-minute boil for this wort, for this German Helles. Okay, as you can see on my Grainfather controller, we have now started the boil. 60 minutes for this beer. I've also added what is called a hop spider, which is where I put the hops in, so it doesn't, they kind of stay within that mesh screen to not clog up the pump on the bottom. So that's kind of what I use. For the hops, here's a good look at these pelletized hops. I'm using the classic Hallertauer hops for this traditional German Helles. And so that's where we're at. We've got 60 minutes for the boil, and now we'll prepare. I've got my stainless steel fermenter here that once the boil is finished, we will cool the wort that's, starting out at 211-12 degrees with this counterflow chiller, which will cool the beer down, and then it'll go in the fermenter and cool down and begin the couple-week fermentation process. Right now our boil is finished, so 60 minutes is done. Now we're going to kind of drain the hop basket to get whatever remaining tasty hop juices are kept in the wort. Other thing I do at the end of the boil is I will stir the wort, kind of get it going in a whirlpool for like a minute or so, and trying to put the sediment, whatever's down there at the bottom near the pump, in the middle, so it stays away from the pump as much as possible. The other thing we do is we reroute the electrical into this thermometer that's built into the line that is going to go into the fermenter, so we know exactly what our temperature will be when it gets down to about 60 to 65 degrees, and we'll start to put it in the fermenter. Okay, I've started to turn the water line, so cold water is going into there. The hot water on the red line is I'm capturing it to use it for cleanup. And once this gets down to about 65-ish or so, then I will start putting the wort into the fermenter. Okay, now you can see that the wort is cooled down to 59 degrees, so it's going very well. Going into the fermenter, all is well. We also captured some beer to measure the original gravity, which is really the amount of the wort's density, the amount of dissolved sugars taken before we've added any yeast. This hydrometer is used to measure the density relative to water, which has a specific gravity of 1. Looks like our reading is around 1.044. I think our target was 1.047. We are just about to the bottom of the wort. As you can see, my fermenter is getting pretty much filled up, closing in on 5 gallons, so that's awesome. This is one of my latest additions to the brew room, a tilt hydrometer that also measures temperature, so you have exact readings while the beer is fermenting for the next couple weeks. You know exactly when it's done and exact temperature. So here's my Grainfather stainless steel conical fermenter. I've got this is temperature control. Right now it's at 64.7 with a target temperature of 46 degrees, which is when I will pitch the yeast into the fermenter. And since I don't have a glycol chiller, I have the poor man's with ice containers and a kind of an aquarium pump that's pumping the cold water in one side and the warm water out on the other side. And as the ice thaws, and I just replace the containers and keep chilling. Works well.